If you've watched my videos, you might know that in the past, I've stated that I hate Fire King Ozai. I hate him with a deep passion, as I feel like he is a special type of villain that is both very bad and somehow beloved by all, and in my infinite need to enlighten the masses, I came to hate him. I found he simply does not work well in the context of Avatar, especially when there's so many better villains in the series, like Zahir, who will always be the best villain in Avatar, in my opinion. But today, I want to give him his credit where it is due. So today, I'm going to talk about Ozai, and how the Avatar comics made him one of the best villains of the series for me. Still not the best villain of the series, though. But first, rant time. Yay! I don't think Ozai works in the show. He feels like a Season 1 Bellows, but for the entire duration of the show. What made Bellows such a great villain, besides his design, actions, words, and did-I-mention design, is the fact that Bellows does get engaged in the plot and becomes a very genuine threat. I was just rewatching some parts of Owl House, and oh, the moment when those horns come out of Hunter's head will never stop being absolutely terrifying. Anyway, that's not the point. Ozai never really does that. Instead, he kind of just sits for the entire duration of the show. He doesn't bring anything in terms of personality or in terms of philosophical debate to the table. Okay, rant over. Comic book Ozai is another story. Because in the comics, he's much more of a threat, despite not being an actual threat. Allow me to explain. Comic book Ozai had a difficult task. Keep Ozai as a villain, despite him being locked up and powerless. Make sure you smash that like button, by the way. Anyway, the showrunners had to get creative. First, let's talk about Ozai as he's presented in flashbacks, and then as a terrifying man lording his past actions over those he has traumatized. So, let's first break down Ozai's backstory that never made it into the TV show. The most important thing to Ozai is getting what he wants, whenever he wants it, using any means necessary. Everything exists, at least in Ozai's mind, to serve him. And this is where you get some of his most terrifying actions and interactions. His interactions with Zuko's mother encapsulate this ethos perfectly. Fair warning, this approaches Gerald's Game levels of psychological shenanigans. That is not a joke. He does some really messed up stuff in the comics. Like, I can see why they didn't put that in the show. First, when he encounters Zuko's mom, she's already in love, and I believe betrothed to another. Yes, I did get all the comics so I could reread them, but no, I'm not going to, because lazy. Anyway, as I was saying, this is where we see the true terror of Ozai. Ozai takes. I wish that aspect of his character was explored in the show, but alas, that would be having my cake and enjoying a good TV show. Ozai's first despicable act, in my opinion, is not the fact that he takes Zuko's mother from her love, but also how he manipulates her into staying with him. Ursa, Zuko's mom, has a lover who tries to stop her from being married off to Ozai. In doing so, he thinks he can apparently solo the entire Fire Nation army, which he cannot. So, in order to save his life, which he stupidly threw away, Ursa promises to be with Ozai in order to allow her real lover to live. But that's just the beginning. We got plenty more despicable acts to come. The only thing greater than Ozai's manipulation is his own greed and sadism. Ursa tries to throw Ozai off by writing a fake letter claiming that Zuko isn't actually Ozai's son. I believe this is a desperate attempt to either spare Zuko some pain or simply because she regrets marrying Ozai that much. Again, they're literally right outside my room, but I don't like to walk that far. Ozai, as you can imagine, doesn't take this very well. He goes, I know you're lying. Zuko is my son, but I don't care. So I'm going to treat Zuko like he actually isn't my son and like he is the son of that filthy dog who you once loved. Yes, he literally uses those words. Not the filthy dog part, not the rest of it. Somewhere along the lines. And then he also goes, oh yeah, I killed your lover. He didn't actually, but, you know, he tells Ursa that he killed him like a dog purely for the fun of it because he didn't actually kill him. Anyway, this is just a perfect display of his cruelty. But it goes further than that. In his greed, Ozai asks his father for succession rights when his brother died. His father was justifiably pissed because that's sociopath behavior and orders Ozai to go murder Zuko so that he will know the pain of losing a son. Also sociopath material. Jeez, these guys are not great. Anyway, Ozai agrees because he is objectively the worst. Ursa intercepts him and makes him an offer. Spares Zuko, and Ozai gets a poison that he can use to off his own father. Ozai agrees on the condition that Ursa never shows her face to him again because, again, he's the worst. He then goes on to do a genocide and twist Azula into a mentally unstable monster and brutally scar his own son. So let's recap. Ozai took a man's wife, tried to have that man killed twice, was abusive to his own son, was abusive to his wife, committed patricide and regicide in one fell swoop, attempted world domination, committed genocide, abused his son some more, threw in some daughter abuse, and probably committed tax fraud somewhere along the way. But none of these things truly encapsulate why I think the comics redeemed Ozai. Ozai's backstory is more fleshed out, but essentially just puts him in a place where he's just an absolute piece of human filth. It doesn't give him more depth. It simply reinforces the things that were already hinted at in the show, like him being a horrible person. So why do I think the comics redeemed him? Well, do you remember in the show how the Avatar does the whole whooshy tri-finger exploding heart Kamehameha chi thing and takes away his bending? Well, after being deposed by this 12-year-old, he is thrown in prison, and this is where he was redeemed. Not actually redeemed, he only digs a deeper hole for himself, but in terms of character writing, he is redeemed. He still feels the need to make himself the biggest man. He holds information over Zuko's head, essentially forcing his son to beg at his feet. But the main thing that I love is when he confronts Ursa after she returns to the Fire Kingdom. It's a great moment. He tries to draw on all of the trauma and suffering he has caused, and fails. Ursa faces her fear, and we finally see Ozai for what he is. A small and ugly man with no power. Ozai is given so much depth in the comics that he becomes a good villain, despite being pretty bland and uninteresting, in the actual show. Do I think Ozai is a good villain? Yes, as long as you're talking about the show. As long as you're not talking about the show. Nothing burger of a character who literally does nothing besides sit on a chair the entire time. Like Thanos if there was never an Infinity War or Endgame. Yeah, it's not a good character. But comic book Thanos, comic book Ozai is good. I'm going to stop recording before I mess up anymore. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a great day. Peace.